Part 6. We're getting back to the Kula Ring right in here. Remember the red shell necklaces called Sulava. This is the important thing. And the white shell armbands called Mwali are traded in different directions around the Trobriand Islands in a system of balanced reciprocity. Those were the horticulturalists. These are people growing food. Now there's the pastoralists, people raising animals, animal husbandry. They're nomadic. The people growing the food, of course, have to stay in one place. Remember about pigs and why pigs have to stay in one place, um, because you can't, they can't be nomadic. But sheep and goats are okay for Muslims and Jews to eat. This was the materialist argument about why the pork is banned. Home base camp. Remember, transhumance has to do with moving seasonally from the highlands to the valley, back and forth as winter is over and the rains stop. Um, Reciprocity has to do with we've already talked about reciprocity. Intensive agriculture comes about when we're planting the same soil over and over again, year after year after year, using fertilizers and using irrigation. This results in huge food surpluses, which result in cities. Then we have social classes, um, government, especially the state, production, redistribution, and the market economy. Remember the three functions and two forms of money. The three functions being, uh, where was this? The money stores value. It purchases goods and services and can be used to measure the value of goods and services. It's a universal equivalent. So you can save money and it's still worth basically what it was last year. Um, you can use it to buy stuff, and then you can say how much is that worth, and then you can figure out a value for it. Two forms of money: special purpose money that can only be used as money, just has exchange value. Then multi-purpose money can also be useful as a commodity. Um, Industrialism. That's the end of it. On to marriage, family, and gender. Um, Kinship, then the gender spectrum. So first we're talking about marriage and kinship. The functions of marriage are to regulate sexual access, regulate the division of labor, regulate child care support, and regulate the legitimacy of offspring. Um, that's basically what it does. We have spouses. Um, Monogamy means one man and one woman. Serial monogamy means they can only come one at a time, but you can have multiple ones as long as you divorce the first before you marry the second. Polygamy has to do with multiple spouses. Polygyny has to do with multiple wives marrying one man. Polyandry, multiple men marrying one wife. Exogamy is marriage outside of the group. Endogamy is marriage inside of the group. Incest taboo is this taboo that's sort of universal across almost all cultures, where there are certain people who are too close for you to marry. Sometimes this is siblings and parents, usually parents, siblings, and nephews and that sort of children um, are too close to marry. A lot of places it's first cousins, but some places it goes out to fifth cousins. So it sort of moves. Psychological reasons for the incest taboo. There's this idea that people that you grow up with are sort of no longer sexually attractive. There are social, political, as well as some biological reasons as well that the incest taboo for explanations for why it exists. Family residence, where to live upon marriage. The nuclear family lives. The nuclear family is the mother, father, and the immediate children. Neolocal means they live in a new location, living in a new home. Most families follow this pattern of extended family, um, at least around the world. Some are matrilocal and live with the wife's parents. Others are patrilocal and live with the husband's parents. The grandparents on the husband's side versus the wife's side. Matrilineal means you trace your descent through the mother's line. Matriarchal means you are ruled by women. So these are three very different situations, and they don't overlap. necessarily. Although matrilocal and matrilineal, you tend to live with the people who you are inheriting from, etc. Marriage is an economic exchange. So there's a person of value leaving one home in these systems of patrilineal or matrilineal, what we call unilineal descent. You're losing a family member, and they're going and belonging to someone, living with someone else's family, basically. Um, and so it becomes an economic exchange. Bride price or bride wealth or bride service replaces the value of the daughter who is leaving. So this is more of the daughter leaving, and having to have her value replaced in her own parents' family. Dowry is the opposite of that. Dowry is what the woman brings to the father's family. So instead of her leaving, she's coming with something, and typically, um, um, dowry involves marrying up, so sort of adding some value to the marriage by transferring wealth from the family of the bride to the family of the groom. Dowry death can result from that, whether through suicide or through murder or neglect. Arranged marriage and forced marriage, we want to be sure this is important. Arranged marriages are not forced marriages necessarily. You can arrange the marriage as the parents and the grandparents. You can find a suitable partner who's the right social class and the right family and the right personality and temperament and the right religion, and bring that man to your daughter and say, here, we would really like you to marry him. And she can spend 3 hours with him, or 3 weeks, or 3 months, and at the end of that say, no, sorry, I just can't marry this guy. And they'll be like, that's cool, we'll find another one, right? So there's that's arranged. Forced is to say, no, you're marrying him, and that's final. So that's very different. It's not necessarily that arranged marriages are forced marriages. But if they are forced, sometimes they're child marriages. The child is coerced or encouraged or pressured to marry a much older spouse, usually a younger girl with an older man. And carrying on with kinship, so there's marriage and there's kinship. Kinship has to do with the blood relations, lineage or descent. Although fictive kinship also occurs, claiming that the person is related, even though there's no blood relationship. Um, Bilateral descent is you're equally related to both sides, your mother's side and your father's side. Unilineal descent, you are mainly related on your father's side, or mainly related on your mother's side and not the other. So that's unilineal. It just goes through the one line. Gender, sex. Now we're on to gender, marriage, family, and gender. Gender roles, gender identity, um, sex and sexuality. Gender tends to be connected to gender roles, social roles, um, and sex to biology, sexuality to sexual attraction. Gender intersex is connected to people with indeterminate um, chromosomes, indeterminate bodies. Um, Gender identity has to do with, let me get the wording out here, not economics. Hold on. Trying to get through this. Whoop. Teach a couple different textbooks on here, and I'm trying not to depart from the textbook. Remember where I am. Right, so gender roles, culturally appropriate roles of individuals in society. Gender identity, predetermined by biological factors and formed through interactions with one another. Cisgender is where the gender identity matches the assigned sex at birth. Transgender is where it closely matches a gender other than the one assigned at birth. Genderqueer or gender fluid people express their identity or expression along a spectrum in a non-binary way. And then gender dysphoria is distress felt by people who experience their gender identity as non-conforming. Okay. Third genders, these are societies that don't just have two genders, they have a third one. It's neither male nor female. In Native American societies, it's two-spirit. This idea that that gender is not connected to your body but connected to your spirit, and so two-spirit people have both male and female spirits. The Hijra, this is a South Asian, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, social role for third genders there. They can get an ID, their ID card says male, female, Hijra. Um, so they're neither male nor female. Um, and they have important social roles in their societies. Um, Sexual identity, sexual orientation. This has to do with who you are attracted to have sexual intercourse with. It is independent. It's important to remember that. The independence of gender identity. This is important. Gender identity from sexual orientation. So just because you might have an identity that is um, transgender does not necessarily mean that you also have a sexual attraction to exclusively to same gender, same sex people. So we don't want to mix those up. That's important that we shouldn't mix up gender identity and sexual orientation. Completely different things going on there. Heterosexuality is usually attracted to the opposite sex. Homosexuality attracted to the same sex. Bisexual attracted to either or both. Sorry, both men and women. Pansexual attracted to. Oh, let me get this down here. I don't want to mess it up. Pansexual attracted to anyone regardless of gender or sexuality. Polysexual attracted to people with multiple sexes and genders, and then asexual is having little or no romantic feelings. Body modification, we have rites of passage and scarification, and I will come back because we only have one left, but we still got 12 minutes.